Hello everyone and welcome back to the Mental Health Minis. Absolutely delighted to join by Norwich City correspondent for The Athletic, Michael Bailey. Michael, welcome.
Morning, David.
So as always with these, we'll talk about sort of your experiences with mental health, whether it be positive or negative, would be as open as you want to be. Talk about how sport can have an impact on that, or anything else indeed that may do. And if at the end, if you've got any advice for people, we could talk about that as well. So as I always say, without further ado, let's crack on and talk about your experiences, Michael.
Yeah, well, I think they're wide ranging. They're private. They've affected me. They've affected people close to me. I feel like there's sometimes maybe a separation from. I don't really think about this a lot, and I will say things to my wife, and she'll be like, "Well, you do realize that that's not normal or something." And I'm like, "Well, just in terms of maybe," because I think sometimes people, they see me around a lot, and obviously I stick my face in a lot of places, and so that I think, and I'm the same. You see someone a lot, so you feel like you know them, and then that comes with a degree of sort of appreciating who they are, and that's not a bad thing at all. That's a lovely thing, and I love that interaction. I think it's been a huge part of my job to be quite open like that in what I do, because I feel like I have a stake in what Norwich City do. It's been a huge part of my life as a supporter before I covered them. So um, so that community is really close to who I am as a person. So I feel like it's right that I should be really engaged with it. Um, but then, underneath that, there's a lot that goes on in terms of processing my job and balancing things, and that can sometimes conflict quite a lot with these, maybe the person that people can see sometimes. And I live in my head quite a lot, so I can sit there thinking about that quite a lot, and probably more than I should. The fact, should I even be thinking about it in the first place? Should it even register? I don't know what there's probably not a right or wrong answer, but you sort of your head goes around in that as well. And then you just take away the whole Norwich City and my job and professional element. I mean, I think from the grief of losing my dad a couple of years ago, to other situations that we've had to deal with my family and my wife's family. There's a lot that goes on that you have to process. So there's all manner of experiences, and I think all of us have that. Every challenge, every obstacle we go through presents a mental health scenario, really, where we either have the ability to process it, or we need to lean on people to process it, or we can't process it and we get stuck. And sometimes people will help you out of that. Sometimes you can only get out of it once you've helped yourself, and you don't know when you're going to be ready to do that. So I just think the fact that we're doing videos like this is phenomenal. I wanted to do this because I think it helps as many people talking about it as possible. By the same token, I know how hard talking about it can be. And actually, when you're in really difficult things and moments, people say, "Oh, just talk." That's great. I can tell you, when I'm in a really difficult position, the last thing I want to do is talk. I want to just sit in my own room and be there. And you then have to find the strength to get out of that. And that's incredibly difficult. So I think that's probably some of the experiences that I've been through. And to be honest, I continue to go through, and I think we all do. I have to deal with these things almost routinely, really, and it's tiring, but then sometimes it's wonderful, and you feel on top of the world and on top of things too. So I guess it's just a journey with no end. There's no recovery, there's no cure, there's no continual success from my experience. It's a daily journey that just takes you through peaks and troughs that you have to deal with, come to terms with, and also appreciate when they're worth appreciating.
It's the old cliche, isn't it? It's a roller coaster. Some people have more ups and downs than others, but the whole point is you will have lots of ups and downs. I want to pick up on something you said during that, and I think whether you meant it or not, you're very right in the fact that it's very difficult to talk about these things, and there's this whole campaign about talking, and I say it myself, and I'm a big proponent of it, that we should talk about it more. We should talk about mental health. If we've got a problem, we should talk. But I know myself, having had issues myself, that sometimes you don't want to talk, and actually you feel that talking is going to make it feel worse. But one thing I'm very grateful for, and I think it came across in what you said, is about having the people around you that know you. And I will be the first to say that one of my friends will immediately know when there's something wrong, because I'll be slightly different. And my wife will be the same. There'll be something slightly different about the way I'll react, or the way I'll talk, or how quiet I'll be. And they'll constantly niggle at me to make sure that I'm okay, or to talk about it. And I think it came across that you kind of have that as well, by the sounds of it.
I have, yeah, I have an amazing wife. I'm incredibly lucky. Maybe I should tell her this rather than all of you guys more often. But the whole support of the job I do, the commitment and the time and the sacrifice in so many ways that it costs to do it. It's a job I love, by the way. I can hate it at times because it's
We all
a lot
can.
of, and that goes, I know, I mean, I've done lots of other jobs before I've done this one. So I know exactly what it's like in all sorts of jobs. And I think, yeah, I don't think I could do the job I do without my wife. And we've got two just incredible little boys, and well, they're not so little anymore. They're growing too quickly, but the whole balance of what we are as a family unit would, to be honest, be impossible without her. She's and I'm incredibly lucky to have that support, and I can still appreciate what it would be like to not have that. Even then, I find it really hard to talk to her, because, as you say, there's moments where you kind of, and I've done I feel like I've tried to do a lot in terms of the self-awareness and mental health aspect of who I am and how to cope with things. I've got slogans all over the place. I can tell you all the things I should say, all the things that we should do, and all the great mantras that I try and repeat to myself. But if you don't, sometimes you just don't believe these things. They're really hard. You can say them and know them, but it's like, yeah, but I can't do that at the moment. And that makes it really hard. I know every day of the week that if I sit and talk to my wife or someone really close to me, then that makes things better. But there's just a bit where you're like, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I want to, I'm here, and this is, and that's difficult to get through. So I think, and there may well be people watching this who feel like they struggle to have that support, and they struggle to have those people. And I mean, I look at myself again. If we're getting too much about myself, then please just stop me. But sometimes I wonder if I have enough people that I can lean on to do that, or who would nudge me. And that can be hard, because then you're relying on maybe one or two people, and you don't want to really overthink that. But I think one of the things that will be said, and as I said before we started, I watched what Chris Gorham, who I thought was wonderful, on his video with you and Nick. But I think that essence of trying to be kind to yourself is really important, in that you don't worry about putting on people, or you don't think about how much support you've got. You just know that there will be people there who would always want you to feel better about yourself, whoever they are, and there will always be someone close that you can speak to. I'm sure of it. And then it's probably about trying to garner that strength at the right time to rely on them. But in general, across a lot of the time, yes, I do feel incredibly lucky to have my wife, who is a marvel.
One thing I wanted to ask you, and I think this applies to you probably more than a lot of people I may speak to. Not everyone, but you as a journalist, you know that some of the stuff you're going to write or produce is going to have a polarizing effect, because sometimes you just have to write stuff that you know that people won't like to see or hear, but that's part of the role. In terms of the feedback you get from that, I know that we've obviously spoke to Chris and Rob, and they say no, it's absolutely fine, and then they think about it, and actually it can have an effect on them. For you, as someone who knows that they're going to write polarizing pieces, and whether good or bad, knows that they're going to get feedback that may be to the extreme, how do you handle that?
think, I mean, I have sensed myself pulling away from that part of engagement more, because I think we live in a much more polarized world now. People don't necessarily want to know something, they want to have their belief reaffirmed, which is a curious situation to be in. And certainly in the UK as a society, we've undergone quite a significant change in the last 5 to 6 years, and I think that has had a profound impact on how we engage with each other on all manner of levels and all subjects. So my reaction to that has sort of been to step back a bit from that. I've always, I've covered the club since 2007. What's that? 14 years, 15 years ish. So I think there would be times when I'd be sort of told, look, we need to write something on this, and it needs to be, why has this happened? Why are Norwich doing this? And I'd be like, well, don't really agree with that. So I think I've never had to write, or I've never gone through and written something that I wasn't comfortable writing or didn't agree with. So you're right. I know that there are things that people will pick up on. I will interview people. I did an interview, a couple of days ago, which will hopefully be going live soon. And that was another case where you're writing it thinking, whoever I'm speaking to is entrusting me with their views. So you kind of got to do that justice, but you can't worry about pleasing them. You're not writing a piece to please them. You're writing a piece to put across your opinion of them and them and what they are and what your thoughts are on that, and leaving that there for people to judge. So in a way, people's views are kind of secondary. I'm quite lucky as well in the job I do now, that although it's about having people, engage with what I'm doing, I don't have to really worry about what they're engaging with. There's not a right or wrong answer. I don't mind if people disagree or agree. The only points I really get stuck in are if I feel that, it's what someone said is factually or wrong or unfair because of a reason. And again, I feel like I've always kind of tried to write, everything I've done over the years has been about being completely honest and nuanced, so that people can take that on and develop it. But ultimately, as long as what I put across is fair, then that's up to people to do with it what they do. And there will always be things I write where people who are maybe involved will think, well, it wasn't like that, or it's slightly different. And I, to be honest, try not to get too stuck into that, because I'm a perfectionist, and maybe we'll speak about that later. I don't know, but that doesn't mean just trying to be really good at things. That comes with a lot of different baggage. So ultimately, I think I've always tried to be honest, because if you're not honest about an opinion or something you've written or something you've done, or you're honest and fair, then you will end up contradicting yourself. And I can't constantly keep track of all the things I'm saying. So you have to just be. And then if someone makes you alter that perception, then you can kind of take that on board. So I think with that, it doesn't really matter how people react to what you've done, because you've written it honestly and it's fair, and then it's up to people from that point on. The only points I get a bit more hard on myself are when I've made a mistake, which obviously happens all the time, or there's something I haven't found out that would have helped, or someone I haven't rung where I should have done, and it's those sort of things. And then you feel a bit stuck. But other than that, you just have to sort of put it out there. But it is a funny job, journalism. I don't really like chasing people who don't want to speak to me. Like, why would you want to ring people who don't like, why? I don't want to talk to you about that. And I'll be like, you know what, if I was in your position, I wouldn't want to talk to anyone about it. And I try to be the best human I can be as often as possible. And sometimes the job doesn't require that. It requires you to do. So it's a constant balancing act. We're trying to do the best job possible and respectful to everyone you deal with, and holding them to account at the same time, which is essentially the true meaning of what it is to be a journalist.
Well, I think what comes across, Michael, is you've, as much as it's always possible to be, is you enjoy what you do, and that helps you have a handle on any mental health aspects that come out of it. Yes, that isn't always the case, and I'm sure you agree with that, but generally you're comfortable in what you're doing, which helps you. I do want to pick up again on something you just said. I know myself, and again, I never want to make these about me, but I know I'm my own biggest critic. I will, and I don't just mean like people say that as, oh, I criticize my own work. I criticize everything about me, and I get shouted at by my wife and my friends, and they hate it. But I'm also not a perfectionist. you've just admitted yourself that you are a perfectionist, and so how does it affect you when you do make a mistake? Are you able to go, okay, I know how to fix that and therefore I can make it better? Or do you almost go into a point, and sorry to use the extreme word, of self-loathing as a result of that? How extreme is it?
Yeah, I think I find it really interesting you talk about how comfortable I am in my job, because again, I think I'm quite good at projecting that and being open and honest and welcoming. And I think that's probably why I enjoy doing Q&As on video and can host things and present things and interview people. But that can be quite different to me being sat in my study when the cameras aren't on and I'm like, oh God, what am I doing? Where the hell am I going with this? What I haven't spoken to half these people. And so, yeah, I think perfection is, so like I spoke to Todd Cantwell the other week, and he was like, well, I'm a perfectionist, like most people are at this level, you just try and be the best you can be. And I think that's right in a kind of, everyone wants to be perfect and really good. But I think the perfectionism that I feel I have is this bit where you set standards and then you achieve something and then you're like, okay, well now the standard has to go up next time. And that can be massively unrealistic. I mean, I've been really lucky to win some brilliant awards. I won a national award just before I left Arch, and one of my first thoughts was, well, I'm not gonna be able to win it next year then, am I? And why would you even think that? And don't get me wrong, I'm really delighted and like overwhelmed by the situation, but why would even a part of your brain think that? And so I do as much as I can on every piece. I try and make sure they're definitive, and sometimes that means they're late or they're overwritten or there's just too much there, and that's hard to process. And no one knows that process. They just see the finished piece and go, "Wow, that's brilliant." And I'm like, "Yeah, but that bit didn't go in," or "Yeah, but what about all this other stuff?" And I never got through to that woman, that bloke, and that would have been great. So you're dealing with that. You're setting higher and higher expectations that can become unrealistic. And if you've got no valve to release that becomes a really difficult place to be in. And that's perfectionism. It's really difficult to process. And sometimes the result of that can be procrastination, because you're like, I don't want to fail at that. So you're ending up sort of like this, and well, I might do something else, or what am I going to do? And that becomes really hard. So I think that, and this is from me genuinely trying to analyze how I go about my job and how I am as a person over a number of years. And as I said, I don't, I've probably had this conversation with my wife and no one else, to be honest, because it's private and it's personal, but it's also something that other people may have to go through. And it's sometimes a contradiction to what people see as me in front of a camera, or me writing a piece and reading it, or me on Twitter. And that's, but I'm talking about this in terms of, you have to then throw in the appreciation, don't you? I love my job. It's a massive challenge, but I love doing it. I love that I get to follow the football club. I have a wonderful family. I have so much that's good, and people will be going through right now horrendously worse things than I've ever been through. And I understand that as well. But we also only live in each other's heads, and ultimately we can only deal with where we are each as people. And comparison works in so many different ways, and it is helpful on so many different levels so much of the time. And I say that as someone who does it all the time. So I know what it is, but it's, you have to just deal with where you are yourself. And that's sort of one of the challenges I've had, certainly, that's come to the fore in the last few years for me. And maybe just isn't quite as straightforward as perfectionist, meaning you're trying to be really good at something.
And I think there's another good point there, in the fact that we all do live in our own heads, and it's the fact, and my nan used to talk about something, keeping up with the Joneses, and you also used to try and work out what you could do to keep up with your neighbor or compare yourself to someone else. And actually, yeah, I mean, I like you, people are going through much worse in their life than I could ever imagine, let alone do. But that doesn't take away from your own issues. That doesn't take away from your own mental health and your own ability to handle and process and enjoy life. Sometimes you're the smallest, you can go through the worst thing in life and you almost brush it off your shoulder and go, all right, that happened. And then the smallest little thing will just set you back. So I think it is about being open and honest with yourself and trying to say, okay, how do I get through these? And I think it's been absolutely amazing listening to you, because you clearly very passionate about what you do. You're clearly very passionate about trying to maintain good mental health and positive mental health, but you're also open that it doesn't always happen, and that everyone is, and the whole point of these videos is everyone is different. And again, I said to you before we started, is the fact that if we came on here and everyone said they had the same story and everyone had the same problems, these videos would be pointless. No, everyone would know, but everyone is different. And there may be someone sitting there watching who has watched the other 6 or 7 videos so far, and may watch all the others and go, well, that doesn't speak to me, but watch you and go, oh, hang on a sec, he feels the same as me. So we are all individual, and we all need to cover off our own positives and negatives. My point of these is to keep them short, so I want to kind of end it there if we can, Michael, because I think we've ended at a good point. I do want to ask one final question though. If anyone is listening, from your point of view, have you got any advice? Easier said than done, I know.
It is easier said than done. I think the best thing you can probably do is talk, but I think before that, you probably have to just breathe. I think you have to take deep breaths. I feel like I can be quite obsessive and I have that sort of obsessive personality at times, and can be anxious, and my heart rate and my breathing will be really shallow and rapid without me realizing it. And you're in the middle of going, oh God, these stuff, or in the middle of doing nothing because I'm worried about all the stuff I've got to do. And I don't do this. Like, I'm giving advice. I'm literally telling myself to do this while I give it as advice. But it is sort of trying to slow your breathing down and just grab that time, because I think at that point you can then find some resilience and strength to then do the things that will help. And you almost have to just look after yourself for that 1 second first. And I think that at least can, in those moments, help you deal with whatever it is or where you are in that moment.
It is interesting, actually. Almost everyone that's done these videos, when I've asked them about advice, they've all said, well, I'm giving this advice, but I don't really do it myself. So I'm kind of almost encouraging myself to do it. And I'm the same.
As I said, I've got the Daily Stoic book over there. I've got Controllables written on my lamp, full of them. But it's, as I said, it's that you can immerse yourself with all those, but it's so much about finding the strength to do them and to grab them and to believe them. That's hardest thing. And I think, as I said, the breathing thing is probably the one thing that can start it off when it's maybe most hardest to, and you then probably need it.
I agree. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Genuinely, I've enjoyed so much listening to you, and this is the kind of thing I could actually talk to you for hours about, because you clearly have got a lot to say on it. But my whole point is to keep these short, so maybe we'll revisit this in the future and see if anything's changed.
Indeed, yes. Hopefully I'll be breathing more.
All right, well, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you soon.